Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple. The final game of the group stage took center stage as Portugal took on France. All four teams in Group F could have still qualified in a number of different positions, so both teams had to be on alert. In the end, the match finished 2-2 thanks to doubles from Ronaldo and Benzema. The XG showed that both sides did have their fair share of chances, but what tactics did Santos and Deschamps use? Let's take a look. A quick reminder of the formations on paper, with Santos looking to stick to his 4-1-4-1, whilst Deschamps went with a 4-2-3-1 that looked like this. Now let's start with France when they were in possession. From goal kicks, Varane and Kimpembe would split the box to give Lloris options on either side, whilst a pivot completed the diamond. But Portugal were pretty effective when they did choose to press higher up, with Jota and Bernardo covering either wide man and Ronaldo on the pivot. And though France could use a double pivot to play out from deep, this was riskier, so they often opted to go long. But generally, Portugal weren't looking to press high, particularly in open play, instead shifting into a 4-1-4-1 shape. And France may have taken a few cues from Germany's success against Portugal by looking to take advantage of the wider regions. And they looked to adapt a somewhat similar shape to Germany in a few ways. This could involve Tolisso dropping deeper, almost as a right centre-back, whilst Pogba and Kanté created a double pivot. This would allow Koundé to advance much higher down the right, as would Hernandez on the far side to provide the width. And much like against Germany, it would mean that France's backline could be outnumbered at times. So if the fullbacks defended wide, there would be gaps in the half spaces, but if they defended too narrow, the fullbacks would be free. More occasionally, we saw Kanté drop in at left centre-back, often with Tolisso and Pogba then creating the double pivot. But most interesting, and perhaps most effective, was when Pogba would split the centre-backs early on. And again, this would allow both fullbacks to push forwards and give the team some width. And although the structure looked the same, the makeup of the players would make this more effective, as when Tolisso or Kanté were deeper, they don't have the same passing range as Pogba. So when Pogba would get more time here, as Portugal were content to sit deep, meaning that Ronaldo wasn't pressing him, it would mean that he could dictate the tempo of the game, and he ended with the most passes in the match. But Pogba was also much more penetrating from deep, often looking for balls over the top or through the lines to a man making a run. The best example of this is in the lead up to Benzema's second. Pogba has moved in to be the third centre-back, with Tolisso moving to a pivot position and Griezmann dropping to the 10 position. And they have a 3 versus 1 in this deep line, so this means that Pogba has all the time in the world on the ball to get his head up. He can then play through an inch-perfect pass to Benzema, who then finishes. Higher up, they didn't need the 3 versus 1 against Ronaldo, as you only need a +1 to make a numerical superiority. So Pogba would move back into the midfield, and this would trigger Tolisso for the most part to push forward into the inside right position to create a front 5, and Griezmann had the freedom playing in behind them, joining the midfield when he saw fit, as well as pushing higher when he liked to, often rotating with Tolisso and Benzema in making these movements. And this constant interchange between the frontmen made it difficult for the centre-backs to pick one man up. We see shades of this in the lead-up to the first penalty. Pogba is initially in a centre-back position, so Tolisso is deeper as a pivot alongside Kanté. Pogba then spreads it wide, and now that he advances into the midfield, Tolisso joins the front line. Hernandez and Mbappe, both a part of the front line at this point, drag Bernardo and Semedo wide, creating a gap in the defense. And France have 3 men extremely central, forcing Diaz and Pepe to defend narrowly, creating gaps in this half space that Pogba can once again expose, leading to the foul. But despite this, for the most part, Portugal were much more guarded in the wide regions, and Bernardo and Jota would regularly drop into almost wing-back positions, having learned from the match against Germany. But let's take a look at what Portugal did on the ball. When Portugal had the ball in open play, France generally shifted to a 4-4-2 in defense, and Griezmann and Benzema would press higher up, making it difficult for the centre-backs to progress through the centre. But Tolisso didn't defend as wide as a traditional winger, perhaps to compensate for the potential 3 versus 2 advantage in central regions to Portugal. But Renato Sanchez would then often drop into the left centre-back position, and this could draw Tolisso higher up the pitch, leaving Guerreiro in a lot of space down the left. And Jota and Ronaldo, who love to drift across, could then cause the overload down the left-hand side, but they weren't really able to make the most of it. But it was most often Danilo Pereira who dropped in centrally to create the 3 versus 2 to ease the pressure against the defense. The obvious disadvantage to this was where they had a 3 versus 2 advantage in the midfield, it now became a 2 versus 2. We did see Ronaldo drop in from centre forward into midfield a lot to try and recreate this, but he wasn't often able to get turned. Down the right-hand side, France's shape meant that Mbappe was often defending wide left, and he isn't always the best when tracking back. So, time and again, Semedo looked to get in, overlapping Bernardo Silva, leading to some dangerous situations. Overall, it was an interesting match, but it would have given encouragement to a lot of teams left in the draw, both in an offensive and defensive sense. Both sides would just be happy to get out of the group though, and Portugal will now face Belgium, and France will take on Switzerland. So I want to know down below, how far do you think both sides will go, and any other tactics you noticed in this match. And if you enjoy this and want even more content, check out my Patreon where you can get access to videos early as well as exclusive videos. With the knockout stages confirmed, I'll be doing a prediction video trying to see which team will go all the way. Head on over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple to check that out. But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.